I probably, as an intro, want to show you just one. No, because we had this Archer leak. No. Anyway, no, I will. Actually, we are short on time, so video is maybe later for the fun. But you had some insights on where robotics actually, what can robotics, collaborative robots, autonomous robots, what they can do. I was on display here, and I found that very impressive. Where what we will probably see in terms of Industry 4.0. Autonomous machines, autonomous plants in the future, and the future is not so far away. Yeah, I mean, I have seen in my, let's say, old home at Fraunhofer recently, half a year ago, very impressive collaborative robot solutions. I couldn't think of that like 10 years ago. Yeah. Seen some pictures here. So, but now we are a bit short in time. We had a fairly good discussion, I think, about the self-assessment questionnaire and how this links to what we have seen in our survey. However, and rather than going through a lot of those AR examples and I would quickly actually go through this. You will have that in your slides. Yeah, you can basically read this. And AR, VR is probably also not the hottest thing, let's say, which nobody has seen here. Yeah. So rather than this, we would just pick a few of the key insights in terms of material, of survey results, yeah, and then move on to the so what, yeah, for the day. In the final presentation, where it's all about the target picture and how this will then basically affect the way forward. And this is also a key element for tomorrow, for the interactive work tomorrow then. Yeah, so now the next section here is corporate services and control. I would rather skip that because also the survey results are probably not so super enlightening. But what we should do is we should have a look at the IT. Yeah. And in IT, that was also a question in your self-assessment here, on the role of IT in the context of digitization. So do the survey participants perceive the information technology department rather as a leader, as a driver, as an enabler, or in a reactive position, yeah, when it comes to digital transformation, Industry 4. And the results more or less speak for themselves. So, yeah, or if I interpret this, yeah, from my experience in quite a few companies, I would say most participants from the business side would even say that IT is an inhibitor for innovation in their companies. Yeah, because they have their roadmaps, even especially in larger corporates. Yeah, they have their roadmaps. They have their architecture plans for setup for the next 3 to 5 years. Then we had this discussion about funding. The finance guys basically allocated budgets. they have a business case that has to be met whenever you want to introduce a new piece of software or a new piece of digital innovation and so. So it's a rather tedious discussion, and I had that personally in digital transformation projects, multi-billion digital transformation projects. Yeah? I had a discussion with a guy, for example, in a C-level guy, a strategy guy. We did a project on customer journeys, bringing that on digital, and then I did with my team a study on the service side. So the one thing is selling, the other thing is servicing, and we discovered that we could save 500 million euro, so 5 billion Turkish lira, I think. No, 2.5 billion Turkish lira. Times 4 or times 5? 2.5 billion Turkish lira today. A year, you could save 2.5 billion Turkish lira a year on that. And this was, I think, in summer, in August or so. And if I were in his position, I would have said, okay, when can you start? Yeah, to do it and to get me the money, to save me the money. But he said, okay, yeah, you know what? We talk about next spring, because then we got our budget through, yeah. Whether we can do a project for 100K or something, 100,000, which would give you a return of 2.5 billion. Yeah, I mean, it's critical that you actually every month counts, yeah. And this describes my experience with digital transformation and the difficulties, not only in IT, but also in the company governance, basically. Yeah. I don't know, yeah, just what was your discussion about IT being in the leadership position, driving that, or rather being reactive? Is there any comments on that? Are you fine with it? What is your take? Yeah, I think more or less.
So, in Ford-Otosan, I think we are in the driver role, and actually somewhere between driver and leader role. But I think we had a discussion around this. Borusan Group mostly prefer to IT to be in the enabler role. I think this is because what you have just said, IT is mostly thought about as a bottleneck for transformation.
And they also, I mean, many companies, IT doesn't have actually the budget responsibility. They get the budget from the business side, and the business side comes with sometimes with a very narrow view on their needs, yeah, and says, okay, please implement this solution which exactly fits their narrow needs but doesn't fit, let's say, into the whole concept. Yeah.
I think there's a discussion around the business involvement, how much business is involved. If IT takes the leader role, our observation is that business retracts themselves from the transformation involvement. That's our experience in Turkey. That's the same as some of the projects that we are conducting. So therefore, we are the business and IT collaboration in that sense is important, and the responsibility, if the transformation responsibility is only on IT itself, then business can we see that business retracts itself from the transformation. But so the key is, I think there's a challenge here for IT, because in IT resources are very limited, and IT is usually taking care of the existing business and how running the operations as they are. And once the digitalization projects come in, then IT comes up with a paradox on how to, or challenge on how to manage, how to allocate those resources into digital and normal running processes. Therefore, I think And putting leadership to the only business team is somehow is difficult as well, because in that sense, IT has the resources. So I think the best solution is to make the IT leader, or a joint leadership of business and IT in this sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody wants to? You want to add directly?
Oh, it's a comment, but I think I give the audience.
Yeah. The audience. Who wants to comment on that?
Not comment, but I would like to ask one thing to attendees. One question. Is there anybody who has the plant manager or the CEO who is coming from the IT industry, IT sector in this group?
Who is coming from the?
The top management level managers is coming from IT sector. Is there anybody?
You mean like a CEO?
Ford,
former,
maybe.
You mean a CEO who formerly...
CEO level or really very top management level?
Well, here you can...
Answer
IT,
this,
telco, we both can answer.
I mean, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Is there any in not for the IT industry, but for example the other automotive industry, for example?
I mean, all the guys
for the IT department responsible for.
No, not IT. Completely responsible for the organization, but is coming from IT side.
I mean, I think you asked the right question. We will come to this tomorrow. Now, let's go to Silicon Valley, right? No, let's go to Silicon Valley. These CEOs, what are they? These are, most of them, Jeff Bezos might be somebody else, but these are IT guys. This shows me your question is absolutely valid. So, see, if you want to build a database business model, if you want to know how this works, right, you need people with IT know-how, but not the old school. Right, rather the ones who know how to run digital. So your question is more than valid. I'd like to answer your question. This is one of the top two problems, right? Because traditional organizations are organized in silos, right? You have heard this 1,000 of times, but this is a problem, right? You have the IT guys, you have the marketing guys, you have the sales guys, you have the financing guys, you have the purchasing guys, blah, blah, blah. Anybody of you using Spotify? The music streaming service. How is Spotify organized? Squads and tribes, right? There is no functional organization. There is responsibility for a product, right? And in this team who's responsible for the product, there are people with marketing competencies, with IT competencies, with other competencies. But these guys are not reporting to the head of marketing, head of IT, head of everything. This is a cross-functional organization, right? This works. The team. It's not in this silo in terms of organization. The team itself, it's completely differently structured, the organization. Think about this, and then apply agile development methods. Like we know from IT, we know Scrum and the rest of it. Scrum is not a methodology which you can only apply to IT. You can apply it to a team which you build where there are business guys, where there are IT guys, and where there are other guys. You just need to have a product owner and a Scrum master. Fundamentally different way of operating your business. And now you would say, yes, you can tell me a lot about this is a company from Sweden, this is a digital player. I'm in a traditional industry here, right? So stop talking. I have heard this 100 of times. Go. 2 years ago, you all know the ING bank, right? I saw some automatic teller machines here. They completely restructured the headquarters. A bank, so a very, very traditional industry, right? They completely restructured the headquarter operation, 3,500 people, right? What kind of organization model did they choose? Squads and tribes, right? So they completely turned the organization around. So the question is, you can't do it in a traditional industry if a bank can do it?
Exactly.
This is the way, so what? This is the way you solve the problem. It's not easily said, but it's doable. And if we talk about disruption, right, we really mean disruption. It's a disruptive way of how you run your companies, right? If you want to be digital, it's not buying the the best, not necessarily buying the best AI solution, VR solution, or the best cloud technology. I can tell you, being in telecom, we had a lot of money to spend, right? Much more than any startup or a lot of people in Silicon Valley on technology. The telco industry, although they are more digital most probably than other industry, they didn't get it right, simply because of the problem. Their operating model is not fit. The problems you are talking is a typical problem. 99 or 98% of all companies face it. And it's absolutely or almost impossible to break through. You can talk a lot, you can build commissions, whatever, how is it called?
Steering teams.
Steering teams, or all these
bodies, like some steering bodies.
You will not succeed, right? If you don't fundamentally change how you operate your system. That's what startups do different, right? Every small startup, they use cloud technology. They are docked onto Amazon Web Service, right? This is what everybody of you can do as well. Why are they faster, right? Because they operate completely differently. And this is the way to success, right? And still, it's not buying more and more hardware or hammering on your IT, which is a very easy thing, right? So what everybody have, oh, the IT is too stupid to do that, IT is too stupid to do this. I would say we are too stupid to organize our companies properly, right? Then the guys in IT can perform with the same budget, right? With the same budget, they can do, they can move mountains. I'm quite sure of it, right? This is why digital transformation, you have heard it a lot of times, has to be driven from the top. Yes, because organizational decisions, these organizational decisions can only be driven from the top. The implementation is from bottom up, right? You need the digital talents to do this. But as long as these fundamental decisions are not taken on the top, well, you do not move out of your box, right? It's very, very difficult to compete with players who operate differently. So I mean, very valid what you asked for. I mean, I suffered for it, like 5-6 years. If you do kind of innovation, it's always the IT, and I cannot blame IT, right? There are no resources. The way things are organized, the missing cooperation with the business or marketing department who just throw over requirements to IT. That does not work. And this is not how digital companies work. They simply work differently. And this is you need to bear in mind. If you want to be successful, you need to be disruptive in this sense as well.
So, do you, a question: do you see CDOs as a solution to this problem that I just mentioned?
Yeah. Do I see CIOs?
Do I see CDOs as an alternative, or as a solution to the problem that we just?
We'll target. I have something on CDOs tomorrow. I have a very personal opinion on this, but I don't want to waste your time. This will take 10 minutes to explain. Yes and no. Put it like this. But it's not. It's not how people think, right? So I'm a CEO, so I delegate everything to the CDO, who have then to somehow align with all the on peer level.
Yeah.
We know how this works, right? If you worked in it, you can have all the power, right? I had all the power about like 200 people, right? I cannot. I was not a CEO responsible for marketing. I cannot simply not move on the same layer as long as we are still stuck to the structures, right? And the way of operating.
Yeah, very interesting discussion, which also is a nice, let's say, link to the final presentation, because we are actually half an hour short of time, and I would like to get this, because it nicely links to the target picture discussion, and we need this as input, basically, for our breakout session after Carl Michael's talk tomorrow morning. Yeah,
I take the blame.
What?
I take the blame for
what?
Here, for the half an hour.
No, not absolutely not. But we could. I mean, could also turn it around. Yeah, we could. I mean, we can move the schedule if we have the. No problem. But the idea was basically CDO. Maybe one final comment. I mean, the CDO has a problem that he doesn't have a budget usually. Yeah, and the budget is where the power is in traditional organizations. So, yeah, You have to be nice and so, and you know how this ends in large corporates when you are nice. Okay, so I will, because we have workplace and culture, the key focus tomorrow of your talk, and this nicely links there. I will skip this. Maybe we show the show basically some of the results, survey results can also show tomorrow morning. I would then come to our last session on framework to illustrate how to design an individual target picture, and going forward also a roadmap for digital transformation towards Industry 4.0, and a few of the aspects we discussed are certainly a key element here. So, without further ado, how does such a typical transformation journey look like? Typically, many traditional industries face a situation like this. Some new technology is introduced, some new player, competitor enters the market, and they react with a classic restructuring program, cost cutting, basically financial performance basically goes down, and then they come to a recovery phase, and then after a while they realize, okay, we have to do something new, we have to come up with some new ideas for new products and services and so on, so that the whole thing can grow, and hopefully at some time, at some point, we will become a digital transformation winner. If we don't make it, it goes this way. Yeah, we've also seen a lot of those examples. Now, many companies look at financial performance only. Very much the public listed companies with a 3-month reporting cycles are typical for this. Yeah. But again, most of the very successful digital companies, they have one advantage, and the advantage is that they actually embedded their financial performance and their financial performance model into a stakeholder benefit and even a corporate purpose concept. So Google had, I think, we organized the knowledge of the world. Yeah. So these are very inspiring mottos, and they align people's thinking. Yeah. And if an organization is basically missing that, it's easy to lose basically direction and get distracted. What is the purpose of this organization? Yeah? Where do I want to be? This is, I think, key. And the second thing, what is key is to have a clear target picture of where you want to go. And I will explain in a minute what I understand by my understanding is of a target picture. But before that, it's also clear, and I want to point out that this target picture is not static, and it is essential along wherever you stand along such a transformation journey, that you have basically a continuous update of your goals. It's not static. Yeah? The times are over where you could, let's say, make a 5-year plan and say, okay, that's a plan, and we keep that. Keep it, we stick to it. Because along this phase, you have to build people and technology capabilities along this journey. We had the people, both aspects, we discussed that at length. We have technology issues, we have people issues, have to build these capabilities. And when I talk about a target picture, I'm speaking about this. I'm speaking about a clear view on products and services. What are future products and services of our company? Yeah? And when you ask this question, it is very critical to focus on user experience. And this comes to the question of what problems do our customers our clients face today. You have to understand this very thoroughly, and you also have to understand which solutions do they actually today buy, or are there any solutions they cannot even buy. Yeah? This is how you come up with intelligent new products and services. And when you can match the technology opportunities that are out there, in those abundance of thousands and thousands of technology solutions, innovations, yeah? And when you can match basically these solutions with a clear view on what your customer actually needs, you have really the first step, you have solved the first step. Rather than just buying new tech stuff because it's nice to experiment and so on, spend a lot of money and you don't get it right. As Carmichael mentioned, this happened quite often. The second key aspect is about the operating model. When I speak about the operating model, I mean processes, IT, the organizational structure, the governance bodies, all these things are the operating model for me. Do I have departments? Do I have tribes and squads? What is the organizational setup there? And so on. And here, the key question is, or the focus is about operational excellence. It's about how do I best deliver those products and services to my clients? Yeah. To be efficient here. By the way, many startups are not efficient in this sector. Startups usually tend to focus here. They tend to focus on product and service. They optimize this, and their focus is not so much on the small startups. It's not so much on operational excellence. When it comes to real digital players, like, for example, the Amazons of this world, they are very, very efficient. They have an extremely well thought through operating model. Yeah? But at the start, this is not the case. So here, in operational excellence, the key topic is what is the best governance line and bodies organization, and what are the best technologies to enable efficient processes. Yeah. What can we leverage there? And the answer is, is not the same for every company, because every company and all the products and services are certainly different. Yeah? So I would say that in some organizations or for some businesses, you probably need relatively strong formal organization, whereas for others, where you have complex products and services to sell, for example, an approach like Carmichael described it with tribes and squads is very, very beneficial, because you need many competencies to deliver that, and you need a lot of creativity to deliver that. When you are in a very mature business, this might not be the best solution, but it's a very individual decision that has to be taken there. And the third key cycle here is or element of the target picture is the business model, and there the key question is about monetization. So how do we make money? Do we sell a product, or do we sell basically a service? Do we sell on a pay-per-use basis? Yeah? And at the intersection of these three circles, you have people and technology capabilities, and they actually enable us to produce, to design the right products and services, yeah? And also to operate this organization. So here the question is about which core competencies do we have or do we need in terms of technology and also people capabilities. And also this, the answer to this question is very different in the pharmaceutical industry. You need different competencies from Bosch machine tool manufacturing or in the telco industry. There are different competencies, certainly. Beyond the topic of mindset, yeah? Mindset is clearly has to be very open, very innovative, but still there's a base set of competencies which is different across the industries. So here is, you need a clear picture of what you need here. And I now want to give you a more Industry 4 centric case example from an automotive supplier, 20 billion or so turnover, more than 100 plants across the world. And the key question we were asked by the COO there was, which technologies should we use basically and apply to become really an Industry 4.0 digital, fully digital company? Which technologies? This was the key question. So if you are faced with this question as a consulting firm, a consulting unit, you immediately know that you actually should have this broader view, yeah, with a target picture covering products and services and operating model and so on, and look far beyond the actual question, which technologies do I have to select? But somehow you have to manage the let's say this process, this transition, to take the people from where they are to where they should be. So the approach we took here is said, okay, we set up a program to first of all assess technologies that are out there and assess them with the perspective of this business. Where is the biggest impact we can see? Yeah? And then map those technologies to the organizational functions and define a vision per function in the operations area. So typical functions are there, I don't know, production planning and control, procurement, factory, plant management, and so on and so forth. Yeah? Logistics. Then define a target picture and assess actually in detail the impact, set up proof of concepts, pilot projects to test out different technologies, and then set up a transformation roadmap and build these competencies basically, and manage this project pipeline, because you can imagine in such a large organization this is maybe 150 or more projects that have to be set up and that have to be somehow in sync, yeah, to get somewhere. Yeah? Where to start, yeah, when did you have to reach certain goals, and so on and so forth. And then in parallel, we set up a stream how to transform the organization, which was also a critical topic. What did we use for this? For the technologies, we set up such a operations building blocks matrix, which basically build clusters of technologies. You can see them here, more the cognitive side. This is big data, advanced analytics. You can imagine this as a box where several technologies are inside. Self-learning systems, labs, bots, autonomous transport systems, this topic, connected things. There's a box with dozens and dozens of technologies inside. Yeah. Smart robots. I mean, you've seen some of the things in the presentation, yeah, and so on. I don't want to go through all of them, but maybe point out some human-centered topics. There are also collective intelligence crowdsourcing approaches, what could help us here. What is relevant in terms of how to organize work. We will hear more details tomorrow on that. Also topics like e-learning, online courses for qualification were topics that we assessed here. And then also topics like, for example, blockchain mentioned it, additive manufacturing, and so on. So, then obviously you need some insights about good practice cases. We've seen some of it. There's more to it. And if you look at those good practice cases, it looks basically like this. You have a short description here in the topic of collaborative robots, which can bring a certain benefit. In this case, the claim is basically that collaborative robots can reduce human idle time by about 85%, yeah, while improving also the safety. So a collaborative robot is basically not caged anymore, as most of you would know. It's a robot that actually interacts with the humans, and it doesn't hurt me when I use it, for example, in the automotive industry. I think they start to use it now in the assembly lines, yeah. For example, lifting very heavy parts and helping humans to place it into a car body. Yeah. And then you have to somehow assess those technologies in terms of the main benefits. And there's certainly an impact of those technologies on the operating expense, so it's a cost topic. Yeah. It's also another cost topic is on what is the impact on the capital expenditure. Yeah. Then topic is certainly what is the impact on quality and get things first time right. Risk management, we had this structure. Time to market and customer experience were the topics. Yeah? So some structure would be, I would advise each company to set up some structure to evaluate those technologies. And then you can basically map those to various organizational functions like the ecosystems, R&D, innovation, manufacturing, logistics, marketing, sales, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And end up with a matrix that would show you for the selected technologies. You would see here on the y-axis from big data, advanced analytics, those boxes, cognitive computed, augmented reality, and so on. Yeah. And here on the x-axis, some specific organizational units. In which fields do you actually have a real impact? Where do you perceive the biggest impact, yeah, for the application of those technologies when you come from the technology perspective? Yeah.
One question.
Yeah.
I think it was 2 slides ago you showed this criteria.
Yeah.
How did you select this criteria? Is it a general set of criteria which you would recommend to any company, or
it's also adapted. It is on the left side. It's also, I mean, I would adapt that in each.
Repeated because of the translation.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so once again the question, because I was thinking about our participants, and if they run a similar exercise, so looking at different technologies and trying to evaluate them, obviously this part on the left-hand side, the main benefit is, one of the key kind of elements of this assessment, at least in this step, right? I mean, you really try to understand what is the impact, the benefit of these technologies. And I was wondering whether these are 6 criteria, whether you would use these 6 criteria for any company, or how would you adapt it to company needs?
How would I adapt it? I mean, I would definitely adapt it to company needs, yeah, because it's from experience I can tell you it is an exercise that cannot be completely generalized. I'm not sure, for example, if I would put the perspective, risk management and control in that format in a criteria list. But what I mean, if I, in the next project, or I've done several of those projects, you always come up with an individualized set of criteria as well, yeah? But some elements would certainly remain, and I would see, for example, the cost topics clearly here, and it is, as it is, it is the current financial architecture of a company always has, in any country I know, the two elements: operating expenditure, which is basically human resources, and also capital expenditure, which is the investment. Yeah, that's how the finance guys think, and that's why these criteria are here, because they have to give the money. Yeah, at the end of the day, and they would ask you, unless we don't, let's say, completely change the organizational model and come to a completely different setup, as you indicated, yeah, you would still have to find a way how to justify, let's say, an investment there. So you need, I think, those criteria, and I would definitely recommend, for example, criteria like time to market or agility. You could also give it a different name, yeah? Or customer experience is certainly also, you could label it differently, but the content and the meaning, I think, is the same. Is that fine? So, and this is an example of the outcome of such an illustrative example of the outcome of such a matrix. Here, big data, the biggest potential was seen in predictive demand and supply planning, and also the second in predictive maintenance, yeah, because there's a lot of data and you could analyze the data on the machines, and when there will be a breakdown, there are pretty advanced solutions out there today that you could apply. And the question is obviously whether you have this case or whether you have, let's say, a very fairly stable environment. In this case, I don't know, when you are more or less maybe in a large scale water or hydropower station or so, predictive maintenance is maybe not the key topic, yeah? So it wouldn't come up here. So other examples here are, in this case, augmented reality for quality inspection. Yeah, this team saw a huge impact. Yeah, so this shows you a bit the principle how this works. So you have on the y-axis, in this case, technologies, and on the x-axis, the organizational functions. And obviously, through such a transformation exercise, these organizational functions could change. When you change the organizational structure, the outcome in the future could be different. Yeah? Maybe there's in the future no logistics department, and this could merge. Yeah? So it's always a back and forth in those processes. But the principle, I think, remains the same. Yeah. So what you can see here was the outcome a bit more abstract from such an impact assessment, a very high-level, board-level summary, basically, of those findings. So you can see that the operating expenditure impact here is between 15 and something like 50% in some areas, in logistics, for example. Yeah, and these are certainly the areas where top management in any company would have a look at. Yeah, at the cost side, and that's why we had earlier on also in the survey this remark that many companies actually underestimate the potential impact of digital and Industry 4.0 technology solutions on their cost base. Yeah? Because the impact on the cost base can really be significant, and this is not made up, this is real data. This is real data. It's obviously a wide range, yeah? But it's thoroughly thought through. And we also did a projection here on the total margin, because you have to balance that with the investment as well. And the outcome is basically projection when you do nothing, light blue. Yeah, the margin will stay at about the same, slight decline. And when you can fully realize the benefit, the outcome is projected like this. Yeah. So, basically, the early adopters of those technologies, and this is a key message, will outperform the followers by a factor of 2. So they have like 17% margin versus 9.4. That's this is in this scenario, which was basically, there were several scenarios, but in this scenario, basically, this was a projection. And the foundation to get a goal. Now, when you want to make this transformation happen, again, you have to look at the whole target picture, at these elements: products and services, operating model, business models, people and tech capabilities. And if I'm talking about products and services, you can also interpret that in a rather abstract sense. It doesn't have to be physical products and services or the complete company. You could think of transformation also of a transformation of, let's say, the CIO area. Yeah? Because you also have products and services you provide. You can start somewhere, always. Yeah? You don't have to start at the highest level, always. So what you can see here is that you have a scale here showing the depicting the business impact, and also the scope of change from incremental to game-changing, and also from limited to particular functions in an organization to covering all aspects in the whole organization. And obviously, on the top right corner, you potentially have the highest impact, yeah, if you tackle all those topics, but it's obviously also the biggest effort and has relatively a fairly high risk and challenges. But if you do nothing, your risk is, as we have seen in the morning, that you disappear. Yeah. If we look at transformation capabilities, and this brings me to my a final key point here. I myself, in various constellations with various teams, I had to look at wide range of studies as well, and also conducted myself another empirical study, which is more focused on organizational transformation, and try to identify actually the differentiating capabilities to make this change happen. So what actually distinguishes companies that are successful in executing those transformations from the ones that are not so successful? And the differentiating capabilities we came up with is number one, that an organization has to be able to uncover the unwritten rules of the game. Because every organization has, let's say, a formal structure somehow, even if it's a startup, they have founders, yeah, or a CEO. Many startups have a CEO or something like that, and others who take care of different aspects of the business. So there's a structure, a formal structure, but there's also an informal structure. And the bigger the organization is, the more important the informal structure is. You got to know who you have to talk to and where you have to go to make things happen. I'm pretty sure that most of you would agree to this statement. And this can be significantly different from the formal structure where you have an organizational chart and you know this guy or this person, this lady should be responsible for this and that. It's probably not the things work. So what do I mean by this? The written rules are mission, vision, value statements, procedures, processes, reward systems, goal systems, yeah? And the unwritten rules are basically reflected by, or reflect our basic beliefs, what really drives our day-to-day behavior in an organization. So how do I get what I want? What do I need to be successful in this organization? And how do I avoid problems? Yeah. There has been a tool developed by my former colleagues like 20 years ago at RCD Little called the UROC analysis. There's a book on it as well. And it basically analyzes in a structured way those unwritten rules and makes them transparent. And once you do that, you can do almost anything. Here's a slightly simplified case example. Written rules are, for example, in many organizations that you have to achieve breadth. Yeah? You have to have a broad knowledge. Then basically that your boss evaluates your performance, yeah, and they have a structure for it, and that also that managers are accountable for their profit and loss. Yeah, in many organizations you would find that, and the unwritten rules are more or less the experience what you have. What people do is they job hop, yeah, in terms of your boss is, or my boss is evaluating me. I want to keep him happy. I want to stand out from the crowd. Yeah, and I don't want to be associated with failure. So I'd rather move on to my next job before something happens. Yeah, or my next role. Yeah, and in terms of P&L accountability, people protect their area, yeah, and you have to watch your quarterly reports or monthly reports or whatever, yeah, and this leads to problems, poor teamwork, lack of cooperation across the company, short-termism. Look only until the next quarter. You don't look like 2 or 3 years ahead. Yeah, and people avoid risk. Yeah, and these are exactly topics that have to be addressed by new work aspects, as we will hear tomorrow. And the second key aspect in differentiating capability is to establish seamless communication and to build trust in an organization. and if I say trust, I mean trust across all functions and levels. And when I speak of trust, what is that in an organizational context? Trust in an organizational context is actually a bet that if I do somebody else a favor without an immediate payoff, that I get something back, it will come back in a positive way in the future. It's a bet. That's trust. And in a survey I did with these companies, there were also around 100, by the way, big ones usually. The key outcome, I didn't want to put too much data here, but the key elements were that trustful and the areas where organizations need most improvement was to improve the trust and cross-functional trust in the leadership team, because what you experience in many organizations is that the board areas, even at the board level, these guys, they don't trust each other. They don't work together. They are sort of paranoid. In many cases, the bigger the organization, the bigger the problem usually. And the second is that people across the functional areas don't trust each other very often. When there are people in the marketing department or the IT department or sales or so and operations, they don't really trust each other. These were empirically based 2 top factors among some others. What's interesting is all the tools topics were not in the top 10, more or less. It was all rather the soft issues that ranked in the top 10 from about 50 factors. 53, I think there were. So it again was not about technology, tools, introducing process management tools or something like that. It was not in the top 10. How do you build it? My experience from large transformation programs, very positive approach, of a very positive element was with the so-called campus approach in large organizations especially. And this means to bring together people from different organizational functions and hierarchical levels together in a rather, let's say, workshop setting for 1 to 3 days a week. Take them out of their normal roles, get them to work together on the design of such a transformation program. And you can do that on various levels, like really hardcore. You have a dedicated building. I did that with about 400 people or so already, and basically organized it. In this case, I think it was 2.5, 3 days to get them in. You can do that also in a lighter mode, basically, where it's only a few rooms that you allocate, and you get people maybe a few hours a week or so together to work jointly on solutions. But the outcome is usually, in those hardcore campus concepts, you would do that for 6 to 8 weeks or so in a large organization. The outcome is usually that you have a trust, you build trust among these teams across hierarchies, across functions. Hierarchy overarching, and the people, even if they go out into their line functions after that, they collaborate. And also in such a campus mode, you have a highly efficient working environment because people are all sitting together. They can just, they meet at the coffee table and they discuss solutions. And that's why they move fast. That's especially for large corporate organizations a very good tool to implement change. Now, the target picture, we had that. already. And the definition of the target picture, my opinion, clearly has to be done for each existing legacy business and also for the growth businesses. So it's not one target picture for the whole company, but it's many of them, and you have to sort of manage a portfolio. And then a key topic is also how to attract, motivate, and retain talent with tangible vision and purpose of an organization, because especially the young generation, they don't want to work just for the money. They want to work in an environment that is really inspiring, and thus gives them something back beyond pure opportunity to earn a living. And then obviously, to be successful, it is also very important to identify among all those opportunities the high leverage interventions and to establish an effective transformation governance. So identify the projects and the topics with the highest impact, and also establish a governance to drive it through an organization is critical, because you cannot get rid, let's say, of old structures in a short time frame. You have to somehow find a way to tackle this and to overcome the barriers. And then a clear message, focus on execution. So you need clear roles and responsibilities. You need simply the people who wake up in the morning and says, okay, this is my task. I got to make sure that this project is successful. A clear assignment of roles and responsibilities. You need also for transformation approaches a high risk buffer to cover for disruptive events. And what do I mean by this? There's always something happens on the way. So you need usually more time and more money than you would have ever expected. And you need also empirical creativity. I labeled it as empirical creativity to build, let's say, agile solutions on the way. This comes back to what we discussed earlier on. It's about adapting concepts like we have seen from the startups, the minimal viable products, for example, approach to develop solutions rather in a short-term sprint with short feedback cycles and not in those endless traditional waterfall approaches. So that's more or less the closing slide for this part of the presentation. To summarize the key takeaways, why should you care, or we care, about Industry 4.0? There are two reasons. Either you want to win in this race, or you don't want to disappear. Second, we have seen the big picture. Empirical evidence suggests that the transformation failure is actually rather the norm. We've seen those 52% of companies that have disappeared in 15 years or so. Then Industry 4.0 is about an horizontal and vertical integration of data from smart connected products. And it's also about analytics across the value chain and the product lifecycle. A target picture which covers products and services, operating model, business model, as well as people and technology capabilities is key. Then it is essential for an Industry 4 initiatives to really understand the technology building blocks and what they can do in my context, in my business. and in my ecosystem. So it is certainly, while I wouldn't recommend a technology-driven approach, definitely not, but it is important to have a deep tech understanding in these cases. Otherwise, you would jump on some fancy stuff which doesn't deliver in the end. So, and then successful transformations largely depending on the culture, on changing the culture, and this requires a change in basic beliefs as well, and this is a hard bit. I'm pretty sure that Carmichael will address this tomorrow with a lot of very lively examples. And for the actual transformation, to make transformations happen in established organizations, from my experience, I can clearly say this campus-style approach really helped me on several occasions, because it helped to build trust and move things forward. So that's my key takeaway or summary of today. And what we will do tomorrow, I outlined that already, is that we will again have a mixture of the plenary element, which will be focusing on new work aspects by Carmichael. I think this will be very inspiring. And after that, we will come together in a breakout session and try to link all the elements which we had in today and also tomorrow morning, and design such a target picture, get in a more, let's say, creative role, or maybe in a similar setup with groups as we had it today, and I'm looking forward to that. So for now, that's my part. Any comments, questions from your side so far? Or are you actually relieved that the whole day after, I think, 8 hours or so is over? We were pretty busy, I think.
Thank you very much. Questions. Thank you very much for this influential presentation and the insights. And now we have this networking reception, the same hotel next door, but at the top of the building. We are going to Shandong to have this networking reception, and we'd like to see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning here again. Thank you very much for your participation as well. Thanks. See you at the hotel.
Good.